Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Black as night, erase death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate make it right.
I myself am strange and unusual. Cast a circle, spark some incense, and grab a cup of tea, because it's time for the Cousins Coven podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Welcome back to the Coven. Today, Sharon will be sharing some haunted history on San Antonio's historic Menger Hotel and her experience staying there. But first, it's time for Cauldron Topics.
All right, guys, I'm pretty excited about this one. We've had a few listeners ask us to talk about the different types of witchcraft, and as overwhelming as it seemed, last week's episode really inspired me to finally buckle down and talk about it, and I just wanted to look at different outlooks on magic. And by no means are we going to be able to cover every type or go really deep into each type, but we decided to touch base on a few of the main types of magic, witches, and witchcraft. And the goal here is really just to share and discuss the information and maybe inspire you to dive a little bit deeper on a type of magic that calls to you to learn more. And Wendy, go ahead and take it away. We're going to go down this list in a little alphabetical order and bring to you the types of magic.
Yay. So the first one we have on the list is Alexandrian Witchcraft. And this is a type or a tradition that began in Britain in the late 1960s, taking Gerald Gardner's reinvention of witchcraft. Alex and Maxine Sanders created their own version. It changed and morphed throughout Alex Sanders' lifetime, based on formal, ritual, and ceremonial magic. Sanders described it as somewhat eclectic, and students were expected to study as required and undergo initiation ceremonies. It emphasizes areas that are more generally associated with ceremonial magic, such as Kabbalah and angelic magic. An atypical Alexandrian coven has a hierarchical structure and generally comes together for weekly meetings called circles. At the very least, they meet on the full moons, new moons, and sabbats. Their rituals are usually done sky-clad. Most Alexandrian covens will allow a non-initiate to attend their circles, and usually as a beginner who is undergoing basic training in a circle craft before being accepted for the first degree initiation. Alexandrian Wicca uses essentially the same tools and rituals as Gardnerian Wicca, although in some cases it uses the tools differently and adapts the rituals. It also frequently changes the names of deities and the guardians of the quarters. In some ways, the differences are merely cosmetic, but in others, they are fundamental differences in philosophy.
Nice. I haven't really read any books on this type of magic or practice it myself, but I'm really interested to kind of look deeper into Gerald Gardner's reinvention of witchcraft, I should say.
Yeah, I actually have heard so much about him over the past few weeks. I hadn't ever heard of him before, and then all of a sudden, I'm reading more and more about him, so I'm interested in it as well.
Nice. The next one on our list is to talk about the bruja or the curandera. And bruja is the Spanish word for witch, and curandera means healer in Spanish. Both words are used to describe the witches, healers, and medicine workers of a specific Hispanic folk healing tradition that continues today in a variety of forms in the USA and Latin America. And like many forms of witchcraft and healing, Curanderismo, which I probably butchered, the path of the curandera and bruja were both suppressed for a long time, and the suppression started with the Spanish conquistadors who imposed the cultural values on indigenous populations. But there has been a great resurgence among young Latin and Hispanic women. The magical workings and practices can include ritual cleansings, energy work, spirit contact, divination, honoring the earth, working closely with nature, and a lot of prayer. Practitioners also use a variety of objects including herbs, spices, eggs, lemons, limes, holy water, saints, crucifixes, prayer candles, incense, oils, and divination tools, and the rituals often invoke the help of Catholic saints and folk saints, family members who passed on, or another spirit. I feel like this kind of magic is pretty popular in San Antonio. A lot of people are always mentioning eggs and how their mom uses eggs to help them when they're sick.
Oh, that's interesting.
I really want to learn more about that. I should ask some of my friends who know and who have done that, how to use the eggs for like cleansing and stuff.
Yeah, you should. Because I wonder if they use the egg whole or if they cook with it or what.
It's usually like rubbing it on the body in specific ways, I know, or even like cracking it on a frying pan and seeing like the way the yolk moves. You can kind of tell if that area is cleansed. So, but I don't know like all the details, so I think I could dive deeper into that.
Yeah, interesting. So it kind of reminds me of scrying when you're talking about cracking the egg open and watching where it goes.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
And it's something that like everyone has in their house, usually an egg. So I like that it's practical.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the next one on the list is ceremonial. This term simply describes a witch who practices high magic. They usually follow some specific traditions such as Hermetic, Thelemic, and Enochian. Often people who practice high magic wouldn't dream of calling themselves witch. Such a practice requires a lot of study and many accoutrements for magical rituals. Rituals are carried out in a strict, step-by-step fashion as prescribed by the particular tradition followed. This one's good for me because I'm going to try to learn Enochian magic. And just let me tell you, I'm only like a chapter into one of the books that I got on it, and it's really intense.
I am proud of you. I think if anyone can dissect it, it'll be you, and maybe even make it more modern and approachable for the modern practitioner.
Exactly.
But yeah, the next one we have here is going to be Celtic Witch. And the Celtic path is really many traditions that fall under the general heading of Celtic. It includes Druidism, Celtic Shamanism, Celtic Wicca or Wicca, and the Grail religion. Celtic witchcraft is primarily derived from the ancient pre-Christian Celtic religion of Gaul and the British Isles. As they practice today, most of the Celtic paths are part of the Neo-Pagan revival, focusing on nature and healing with group and individual rituals that honor the ancients and the earth. Most are very electric, but hold true to the Celtic myths, deities, magic, and rituals. Celtic paths are some of the more popular traditions amongst pagans in the British Isles. Followers are usually healers who work with plants, stones, flowers, trees, the elemental people, the gnomes, and the fairies, which I think is really delightful. And I would also love to learn more about working more with gnomes and fairies.
Yeah, and the whole using plants and flowers and trees, I love that. It's very earthy and it just sounds beautiful.
Yeah, I'm definitely down with that.
Yeah. Okay, next one is chaos magic. A person who uses chaos magic borrows from all kinds of other traditions. The term chaos magic began in the 1970s in the UK. The central idea behind it is belief in the preferred outcome and belief in the method of working toward it. The main rule is that there are no rules. It couldn't be further from ceremonial witchcraft, yet it will use elements of it if the practitioner believes it might help. A chaos witch works on the same principle, taking various deities, methods, and systems from other traditions, ramping up his or her belief in the certainty that it will work and having total faith in themselves and their ability to change and create their reality.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that sounds like some good stuff.
Yes, I definitely believe in, there should be no hard, fast rules on what is what. But I hate when specific witches will tell you it's this way and only this way. I'm like, no, there's so many ways to look at this one situation. And I think that chaos is kind of necessary for us each to have our own path. So I love chaos magic. And there's a lot of books out there on it. I've never even cracked one open, but I'm adding that to my list of to-dos.
I love it. Well, I can't wait. I hope you do get to research this one a little bit more so you can tell us all about it.
Yes, I'll add it to our cauldron topics. All right, next up is Dianiac Witchcraft. This is one I've always heard about but didn't know too much about. So it is an offshoot of Wicca, and Dianiac Witchcraft focuses on female deities. It's named after Diana, the Roman goddess of hunting, nature, and the moon. It's likely that the worship of Diana was a cult back in ancient Rome. Awesome. And Dianiac covens are usually, though not always, restricted to female members. This branch of witchcraft celebrates all things female, and many members report that their coven helped and supported them through difficulties. Dianiac witches work magic on those who oppress or abuse women, and happily work binding spells on them. Ooh, that's pretty intense.
Right. The whole time you're talking about this one, I'm thinking it would be if my life were just a smidge different, it would be real easy for me to join the cult of Diana.
Yes.
Like, I could see myself just diving headfirst into it and be like, down with men.
Right. And I could see how that could be a path, you know, but I am definitely all about equality. I know you are too.
Right. Yes,
and
I
I
am.
don't know about using magic as almost like an attack on another type of person. I've used it for maybe like defenses or shields, but never just to blatantly go and be like, this person messed with my friend or this woman and let's get them back, you know. But I guess a binding spell, you could probably do that without any kind of consequences.
Maybe it depends on what it was. Yeah, and it depends on what it was for. You know, are you just binding someone from doing harm, or are you binding someone from doing good? Because I think you can do either.
I would love to bind Trump's Twitter, if anything, so he gets locked out.
Yeah, he's like all of a sudden forgets his password.
Yes.
All right, the next one is Druid. The modern or neo-Druid witch has a deep respect for nature and bases their whole life on the Druidic way. Often members of environmental organizations, Druids identify with Celtic culture. Some Druids claim an unbroken lineage back to ancient times, but there is no evidence for that. Plus, the ancient Druid rites and knowledge were never recorded, so modern Druidry is an attempt at reconstruction. That's interesting. So I wonder if there was information that was written, but it's just been lost. Is that what we're thinking with this one?
Yes. I think with a lot of this ancient magical cultures, a lot of information got lost or destroyed. Like some people will say that you can only have like male druids. But some will say, no, actually, there are mysterious and legends of like female druids, but all that's been like lost in time. This is another area I really want to educate myself on, because when it comes to history, I never really on my own go researching it. And so I don't know what that time period was like for druids or the type of magic they did.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to find out.
The next one here is Eclectic Witch, and I think that there are more eclectic witches than any other type. An eclectic refuses to be pinned down to one tradition. They embrace anything that appeals to them and define their own path. Eclectic witches don't follow any particular religion or tradition. Instead, they study and learn from many different systems and use it in what way works best for them. They build a tailor-made religion or tradition for themselves from the ground up, rather than following an established tradition. Practitioners' minds remain open and receptive to the knowledge, ideas, beliefs, and methods that others practice. They adapt well to different situations, they create their own rituals, and they do it with what they believe to be true and right for them at that time in their lives. So again, kind of like chaos magicians, they don't follow any rules. They like to explore, they make their own mistakes, and take from their experiences to create their own rules and traditions.
I really love that. I feel like that resonates so much with me, like especially the religion part about building your own. I kind of feel like that's where I've been at in my life for a while.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too, because you've always been just like naturally doing your own thing and following what your calling is.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, so beautiful. All right, Egyptian witchcraft is next. Egyptian witchcraft follows a Wiccan-like path, but focuses on the ancient Egyptian deities. They incorporate most other Wiccan elements, such as moon phases, the wheel of the year, and the solar festivals.
Nice. This is definitely one I want to do a main topic on, kind of like Egyptian magic and lore. And I'm really interested in too, in just like the way they worshipped like cats and things like that.
Yeah, the cats, the sun, and it's very, I'm going to have to say, alien-based.
Yes!
So I feel like we could really learn a lot from this one if we did a little more research. So I'd add that to the list.
Yes, Egyptian witchcraft. The next type we have here is an elemental witch. I'm sure you can all guess what that is. That is a witch who bases their path on working with the 5 esoteric elements: fire, water, air, earth, and spirit. They may also incorporate working with the elementals, which are creatures such as the salamanders, which represent fire, the nymphs, which represent water, and the sylphs, which is air, and gnomes of earth. There are many more elementals that exist, like even gods and goddesses and spirits, and all of them are restricted to their own kind of realm. And I think there's a lot of information about elementals in some older books. Like I think even Crowley has a whole section devoted to elementals in his Ouija board book, which I surprisingly was interested in reading because he goes into detail on safe ways to like use the Ouija, harnessing elementals and talking to them instead of like talking to ghosts.
Right. Yeah, I also read recently something about different archangels being attached to each element. So,
Definitely.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, next is Faery. Faery traditions are based on ancient folklore, usually found in, but not restricted to, the British Isles. In Ireland, the Faery folk are called the Tuatha De Danann. In Wales, the Twylych Tag. And in Scotland, there are a whole bunch of fairy folk, such as Buachayan, brownies, gnomes, the Grugach, heather pixies, and the Shaily courts. But you must watch out for the bad guys. The Gilly-Doo, the Kelpies, the Knuckle Laveys, and the Fawkins. Man, that could... that was really close there. There is also a branch of Wicca called Fairy Wicca. So
I love it.
I love it too. Very interesting. There is a series of books that I read. And I'm surprised that I had such trouble pronouncing the words because I read them over and over again. They went in depth about the Twylych Tag and the Tuatha De Danann and about how they are fighting against each other. And it was all made up. It was just this made up book, but it was so elegant and beautiful. And so when I read that this fairy magic and fairy traditions exist in these words, these words she actually pulled from reality, I was really excited.
Dude, you know what's so weird? This entire list was made catered so that you would read that paragraph. I was like, Wendy knows how to say this shit. I'm giving it to her.
I love it.
And then it turns out it resonated with you, and you're like, I love this kind. So perfect.
It.
I knew you would be able to kill it.
I love it.
So that one we'll add on the list of need to know more.
Yes.
And next we have Gardnerian tradition. The modern witchcraft really owes its existence to Gerald Gardner. Drawing on all the research he could muster, he created and crafted the religious movement Wicca, although he never gave it that label. Some claimed he received initiation into witchcraft from a coven based in the New Forest in the south of England. The Gardnerian tradition is a highly structured form of witchcraft. It is coven-based and has a formal progression through degrees of initiation. Practices are kept secret, and many members keep their affiliation to the coven secret also. The tradition uses elements of several ancient traditions. Gardnerian witches worship the horn god and the goddess of nature. Generally, practitioners celebrate their rituals sky-clad, which is naked, by the way, in case you don't know, and a priest and a high priestess lead the coven, emphasizing the leadership of the high priestess. The Gardnerian system marks spiritual progress in the series of initiatory rites and is based on gender bipolarity, which means that all things are divided into a masculine and feminine opposites, like a yin-yang. There have been a number of offshoots, namely the covens and traditions started by Alexanders in the UK and Raymond Buckland in the US.
Very interesting stuff.
Yes, and this is the coven that Doreen Valentine was associated with, and she was a big part of and an influencer. She has done a lot of Wiccan poems, like the Wiccan Ride, which we have read entirely on our witches episode. What was that? Witch trials?
I think it was the witch trials. Yeah, we had to bring in something positive.
And she has lovely poems, really kind of encompassing a lot of witchcraft beliefs that we hold near and dear to this day.
Exactly. Next on the list is Gypsy or Romani Shuviani. The Romani tradition uses spells and rituals to harness the power of nature and of the elemental spirits that are all around us. Evidence strongly demonstrates the Romani gypsies actually originated in India and moved west, migrating through the Middle East into Europe. Roma witches are talented in divination and spellcraft and have always been much in demand, despite the Gypsy Holocaust. Romani Shuviani still maintain their magic. The Romani word is for a wise woman in Shuviani. It has much of the same meaning as witch. A Shuviani knows the rites and rituals for occasions such as weddings and baby blessings, as well as how to use herbs and divination for spells.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I know most of the time when you think of Gypsy, you associate like fortune tellers and things like that. Tarot users.
People who can read more than just tarot cards. They also read playing cards, or they can read dice or something else.
Palms. Yeah.
The traveling gypsies.
Yes. The next type of witch I also thought you would be a fan of, Wendy. This is the Hedge Witch. And hedgecraft is a path that is somewhat shamanic. Your church is nature. Practitioners are sometimes referred to as wise women because they practice earth-based spirituality. In older times, a hedge signified the boundary of the village. In the term hedge witch, it represents the boundary that exists between this world and the spiritual realm. Hedge witches practice what's known as hedge jumping, which is venturing out of this world and into the other world. Ooh. Hedge witches can communicate with the spiritual world and can send messages between both worlds.
Yeah.
And hedge witches practice astral projection as well as work with herbs and earth-based magic. They can be very powerful midwives and herbal healers. They are also said to be night travelers and walkers on the wind. Their main function is to mediate between the spirits and the people in the physical realm. It's thought that flying on a broomstick legend was a misunderstanding based on hedge witches flying into the spiritual realm.
Ooh, makes sense.
And either way, a bird of one kind or another is usually associated with the hedge witches, most commonly a raven or a goose.
Oh my gosh, chills up my back. That's me.
Yes,
for sure.
It's so you. You are a sleepwalker. You are a astral projectioner.
Yeah.
Projectioner.
I do astral project all the time, a lot of times without even wanting to. So
yeah. You are jumping that hedge.
Yeah. I even caught myself astral projecting at work last week.
What?
Yeah. Last week or the week before, I was sitting at work and I kept doing the work, but I wasn't really there. So it was kind of weird. I'd never experienced anything like that before. It was kind of like
Where was your astral body?
I went out in space because that's usually where I go. I'm usually called or pulled.
My God.
Yeah. So I was out in space. And then when I came back, like maybe only 5 minutes had gone by, but it seemed like forever to me. And I was like, shoot, I better go back and just check my work really quick. But my body kept doing the work for me. So
that is some high level stuff right there. Like Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen. Like you are in two places at once. Pretty soon it's going to be you doing that. Like you're doing the dishes. You're off in another realm, flying over the hedge. Oh my God. Like how good at multitasking are you going to be? This is crazy.
It's crazy.
I really think that Hedge Witch I want to put on your shoulders to research for a cauldron topic deeper because this is you.
Yeah, I would totally love to do that. Okay, so it's hereditary witch. The term hereditary is given to a witch who has inherited their magical gifts through their bloodline. Much less common than some would have you believe, hereditary witchcraft is handed down from parent or grandparent to child through the generations. The problem is that mass migration, 2 world wars, and the advance of science disrupted the cycle. Many families dissociated themselves from their pagan past in pursuit of the American dream. Hereditary witchcraft is more prevalent in Europe and Africa. These traditions are often not recorded, except perhaps in grimoires and a book of shadows, which can be passed down and are highly protected. Usually, a hereditary witch relies primarily on oral and physical teachings from their family. Each family has its own unique traditions, and most will stick together as family units rather than create covens. And you know what I like about hereditary witch too, because you can really bring folk magic into this, because a lot of times, you know, your grandma or your great grandma did something and then they pass that information down and you're still using their same traditions today.
That's true, and it's not always labeled witchcraft. It could be like healing with herbs and things like that.
Exactly.
I love the idea of that. I think it's such a romantic idea to actually have someone pass down that information to you, and really special. I don't know too many hereditary witches, to be honest with you. I've only met one person who claimed to learn from their grandparent.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah. Next, we want to tackle Hoodoo Witch. Hoodoo, conjure, and root work are all terms used to describe the practice of African American and Native American folk medicine and magic. Hoodoo is a nature-based healing tradition that consists of a large body of African folkloric practices and beliefs, mixed together with Native American botanical knowledge and European folklore. It should not be confused with voodoo, which is a religion. Practitioners use things like sticks, stones, roots, and bones to make hoodoo mojo bags, which can be a personal talisman worn or carried to bring love, prosperity, protection, and luck. Hoodoo attributes magical properties to herbs, roots, minerals, and animal parts, and the personal bodily fluids of people, and uses each of those things in its magical workings.
Wow.
So I really like learning more about hoodoo and voodoo. A lot of what misconceptions, because of Hollywood are so off base.
Right.
And, like, no one uses voodoo dolls to, like, really pin or hurt people like that.
Right.
And I do plan on trying to go learn more about hoodoo and voodoo and Marie Laveau and just kind of get to the bottom of her true nature.
Well, I'm excited to hear about that one.
Yes, so we'll get deeper into that one. What do we got next?
The next one is the Law of Attraction Witch. And this is a new breed of witch who bases their beliefs on the now ubiquitous law of attraction. In fact, all witchcraft was and is based on this concept. From the sympathetic magic worked by the Cornish Peller to the Wiccan threefold law, it comes down to law of attraction.
That's true. Like I was saying last time, I feel like law of attraction is magic.
Yeah, for sure.
So when I saw that was an actual type, I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, a big type is the left-hand path. And there's a lot of confusion about the left-hand path. Many think that taking the left-handed path, magically speaking, is about black magic or devil worship, and this is not necessarily true. And the left-hand path is much more about the rejection of convention and the breaking of taboos. So you would follow and work with entities that many would categorize as demonic, but they also work with the angels. And it's just about kind of, I guess, changing your viewpoint.
That's very cool. Very interesting. Next on the list is Luciferian. Lucifer is often mistakenly identified as the devil due to the belief that, as an angel, he fell from God's grace. Yet among many, he is revered as the bringer of light, the path to enlightenment, independence, and progression. Luciferians are avid supporters of the arts, science, and the natural world. The witch and astrologer Margaret Montalban founded her own branch of Luciferianism in England called the Order of the Morning Star. She did this with her husband, and she went on to develop a magical system which they delivered via correspondence course.
The next type of witch, Neo-Pagan. And Neo-Paganism is really an umbrella term. I'm sure you've all used it. And this refers to the resurgence of all kinds of witchcraft, including Wicca, Gardnerianism, and the all-new earth-based customs. So this is just kind of an umbrella term.
Nice. Next we have Satanic. Satanic witchcraft came into being as a reaction to historical accusations of witches cohorting with the devil. Its roots are in America, but with the advancements of the internet, the movement has spread worldwide. Satanic witchcraft is a cult of defiance against the constructs of a dictatorial society. If you are for something, your average satanic witch will be against it. They hold that no person can have authority over another without their consent. Satanic witches live by 7 tenets: to live with compassion, justice for all is the ongoing goal, that a person's body is inviolable, freedoms or of others must be respected, beliefs should be in alignment with the current scientific thinking, and we should right our wrongs. Each of the above tenets is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility and honor. Wisdom, justice, and compassion must always prevail.
So all in all, they sound very reasonable.
They totally do. Yeah. I feel like I've learned that even though Satanic is usually considered to be bad, just like Lucifer, there's just certain things that I think maybe were left out over the years.
Yeah. And it's just kind of about, like, what does society tell you these things are based on these religious principles? Mm-hmm. But you kind of peel back layers. There's just more meaning to everything.
Right.
Also, another type of magic, region magic, is Scandinavian witch. And witchcraft is really big in Scandinavia. And Mia Stino, a research assistant at the Danish Folklore Archives, says that almost everyone in Denmark knows a witch, even if they don't know it. And that Scandinavian witches are very diverse and they keep their practices secret. She also estimates that 1 in every 4 witches is a man. And Scandinavian witchcraft takes elements from many other traditions, including, of course, the Norse tradition.
That's pretty amazing. That is a lot of people.
It's interesting that it's all on the down low. Like, is that a part of their power? Like, they keep it secret?
Maybe. Very interesting. That would be a good one to look into, maybe. Okay, sea witch. Sea witches are usually found living near the coast. That's a big surprise. They make use of their surroundings, often working their magic late at night in a secluded cove. They are always in tune with the tides and moon cycles. They are closely aligned with water witches, those who practice near rivers, streams, and lakes. Originally, sea witches were portrayed as magical beings who appeared on ships or as humans with the ability to control the sea and weather conditions. Sailors went to great pains to avoid them. A sea witch may practice the art of astromancy, which is a method of divination based on the tides.
Nice. We have a secular witch, which is an interesting animal. It refers to a witch who does not call upon, work with, or even worship deities in her witchcraft practice. It doesn't mean that the witch doesn't believe in a higher spiritual intelligence, only that these beliefs are not incorporated into her magical work.
Well, that's very interesting stuff there. So let's move on to shaman, shamana. A shamana is a female shaman or medicine woman. Shaman is a term for a magician who works magic by deliberately entering an altered state of consciousness. Shamans and shamanism are found all over the world in the ethnic religions of many peoples. The word is a Western construct. Each tribe or society will have a different name for their personal shaman. Many witches focus solely on the craft through spells and rituals. The mysteries of witchcraft every witch should make. A shaman or shamana combines the role of healer, herbalist, priestess, comma diviner, which is divination of the vagina, if you don't know.
What?
Magician and teacher. They work deeply with the spirits to heal all levels of their being. I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about the vagina.
Shocked. That's a thing?
Yeah. I had no clue until I read this.
I'm like, are you trolling me?
I'm not trolling you. Shamans typically enter I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about it.
They enter the comma. Is what they enter. Oh shoot! Like, do you know anything about that or how that works?
I don't. I just basically was like, "What is a common diviner?" And when I looked it up, it said divination of the vagina, and I was like, "Is this real?" I might have to learn that, but I'm not sure if I want to. I'm a little bit scared.
Please add that to your cauldron topics, please.
Oh.
Comma divination. I can see our Instagram picture now. It's going to be a beautiful like flower that's shaped. Okay, so shamans typically enter into a trance state or other altered state of consciousness through drumming, dancing, and using teacher plants, such as ayahuasca, during a ritual or ceremony. Shamanism assumes that the practitioner is a conduit of energy from the spirits and that she or he has a direct line to those deities who can help or hinder human beings. It's a huge subject and well worth exploring. Shamanic witchcraft emphasizes serving the wider community through rituals, herbalism, spellcraft, healing, counseling, rites of passage, hand fastings, and mysterious initiations. Ooh, I love it.
Yes.
So much to learn, I feel like, about Native American magic. And yes, we are going to cover comma divining one way or another.
Yes, exactly.
The next one is Shinto, which is a Japanese religion that combines legends, folklore, diverse beliefs, and ritual with the worship of gods and essences. Many aspects of it date back to the 6th century. It's charming, fascinating, and has much in common with animism. Its central tenet is kami, defined as the spiritual essence which permeates all things. I guess like the force?
Yeah, the force. It's always with you.
Yeah.
Right, the next one is Stregheria. Stregheria or Strega is an Italian form of witchcraft. The word Stregheria is an archaic Italian word for witchcraft. This is a Catholic-rooted folk magic having little, if any, relationship to authentic forms of Italian witchcraft. But it has both similarities and differences with Wicca, and in some ways resembles Reconstructionist Neo-Paganism focused on a specific nation or culture, in this case, the folk religion of ancient and medieval Italy. Stregheria honors a pantheon centered on a moon goddess and a horned god like Wiccan views of divinity.
Yes, I'm all about those gods.
Yes.
The next on our list is Thelema. It is a spiritual religion where someone wants something to happen, and with the inner workings of the mind. It is willed to happen. It was founded in the early 1900s by Aleister Crowley. He claimed that a being named Aiwass contacted him. Crowley claimed that Aiwass was an alien, intellectual, higher being and possessed the knowledge of the Book of Law. This was the foundation of Thelema. It's kind of interesting that it comes from potentially a gray alien.
Right.
I don't know. I think that it could be interesting to read.
It could be. It's just the only thing that turns me off about it is because it's Aleister Crowley. But then I'm like, oh, well, aliens, so maybe.
I know. Like, you kind of just want to discredit him based on his ways of working.
Right.
But
right.
Let's go on to the nicer form of magic,
yes,
Wicca.
Wicca. Wicca is the last one on the list. It is a neo-pagan religion created by a man named Gerald Gardner in the 1950s. Many people believe that Wicca is very old, although some of the basics are, most of it isn't. Wicca was made to allow the user to make it their own. This makes this religion unique. You can practice it in a group or by yourself. There's no evidence that Gardner ever referred to this particular brand of witchcraft as Wicca. However, it is said that he called those who practiced it Wicca. The first recorded use of the term Wicca was in 1962.
So I've seen it spelled like Wicca, W-I-C-C-A was what we use, but then I've also heard that it could be called Witta, like W-I-T-T-A.
Right, I've heard that too.
It's interesting that everyone credits him even though he would never say that. So I wonder how he feels about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I guess that's just a label. This is definitely the type of magic I work closely with and feel comfortable with, but then I like to add in like the chaos factor because making it your own kind of thing, you know?
Right. Like if we don't have a specific ingredient, we got to use what we got.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that inspired you guys or you found some stuff interesting. If there's a type that you are interested in hearing more about, hit us up as always at our email at cousinscoven2@gmail.com. And next we should go ahead and move on to our main topic.
Yay.
So today I really want to talk about a couple of historic places in downtown San Antonio. There is a lot of places down there that are preserved and cannot be messed with or touched because of their historical landmarks. One of them is the Menger Hotel. It's a beautiful historic inn located on land steeped in tragedy and battle, being that it was built across from the infamous Alamo. It considers itself to be the most haunted hotel in all of Texas, and it's home to over 32 known entities. And this Victorian-style inn has seen a lot of life and death worldwide. So this place has a lot of history I really wanted to share with you before I even get into all of the types of ghosts here. So the Menger Inn was originally built in 1859 by German immigrant and brewer William Menger and his wife Mary Gunther Menger. And the Battle of the Alamo was in 1836, so it was 23 years earlier. So a lot of entities that are seen here are like men in soldier uniforms, Native Americans, and clothing of that era. And the Menger began as just a tavern back in the day, and it was just really the first brewery in Texas, to be exact. and a stable for men to come by and drink, and they said it was the best beer west of the Mississippi, and so good in fact that all the men kept getting belligerently drunk at night, and they'd be unable to find their horses, and they wouldn't be able to ride on. So Mr. Menger saw like an opportunity here, and he's like, oh shoot, maybe we should make this place like a tavern and slash inn so that the cowboys could sleep off their booze, basically. So they turned it into a hotel, and they decked it out with like these wrought iron balconies, stained glass roof Victorian lobby, which I showed you that video of.
Yeah, so beautiful.
It is. It's so pretty. And it was a huge success. It was ushering in a new area of basically sophistication to the rugged Texas frontier. It started as basically 2 stories and then eventually grew to 3. And Mr. Menger died at the hotel in March 1871, and his widow and son took over the management, and since then it's really changed ownership over the years. In 1909, the hotel was again enlarged with an addition to the south side, expansioning to accommodate for the number of guests who were visiting. And so now when you go, you can kind of stay in the original side, with it has like all original wood flooring that's really creaky and all this old antique furniture, and that's where I was able to stay on, versus like the newer side that was made in then 1909. So consider that newer. Is pretty crazy though.
Right, it's still pretty old. So I just have one question. Do you know, did Mr. Menger, did he die natural causes, or was something mysterious about his death?
I want to say there was natural causes there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to stay on the more original side because it's said to be more active, although both sides are haunted. So I guess I was kind of thinking maybe this means the ghosts here tend to be more residual hauntings, since they don't really recognize the additions or changes to the building.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so they're not really, what is the other type? Intelligent hauntings?
Yeah, an intelligent.
Mm-hmm. And so if you look at the hotel's guest book over the years, it really includes the names of a lot of famous people, from famous performers to former presidents. Like they had Taft, McKinley, Grant, Harrison, Roosevelt, Eisenhower, Nixon, and even Bill Clinton. There's like this great picture of Bill Clinton in the lobby of him like eating up on their famous mango ice cream.
Nice.
There was a lot of famous opera singers who were there, like Lily Lantry and the actor-singer Roy Rogers. Both of these rooms I tried to stay in. I tried to stay in the Roy Rogers suite because it had like just right next to one of the more haunted rooms that was available. But I ended up getting moved to the Lily Lantry suite, which actually had 2 separate rooms and was bigger. I don't know what was going on with the universe, but they didn't want me in the Roy Rogers suite. They wanted me in the Lantry suite. I was trying to make it be like, okay, it's not like I missed out on paranormal activity. It's just that it wanted me to be over here.
In a nice big room.
Yeah, it was a bigger room. And so there were even military heroes that stayed there over the years, like Robert E. Lee. And the bar, in fact, has ties to the Teddy's Rough Riders, which was a cavalry group that formed in 1898 during the Spanish-American War, for anyone that didn't know. Teddy was known for being over the top and really charismatic, so he would lure men into the bar. He'd buy them a bunch of rounds. They'd get them all drunk, and basically he would talk about adventure and the excitement that they would have if they were to join the Rough Riders. And when they were super drunk, they would sign on and be like, sure, I'll join. And like in the morning, they'd be waking up and they're like on the way to Cuba, or like that's what their agenda was.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so around 1999, which was the 100-year anniversary of all these recruitments, guests and staff at the Menger Hotel started to experience a lot of activity. And a psychic by the name of Robert Theige said that this was really no coincidence that the Menger resonates with the vibes from the war era and the recruitment of the Rough Riders. So the ghost sightings were kind of going all crazy in 1999. One of the big ghost sightings was in the bar. And it was at night in 1995. The bar was closed, and there was just a custodian in there. He was just cleaning. And to get into the bar, you actually have to open these double glass doors from the Menger Hotel and go down a little hallway. And so he opens up the glass doors, and he puts this like a little door stopper in place so that he could wheel his cleaning cart through. And he's like grabbing supplies, and then he just happens to glance over at the bar, and he notices that one of the bar stools is on the floor, which is kind of weird because all the other ones were flipped upside down, like stacked on the bar. And so he's like, whatever. And then he goes to like grab something. He looks back, and sitting on the freaking stool is a apparition of a man dressed in a military uniform like a Rough Rider. And the ghost was just sitting on the stool and kind of like doing a finger motion, like, get over here, with his finger. And the custodian freaked out. He was not someone who was into the paranormal whatsoever. He wanted nothing to do with the ghost, and he runs over to the double doors, but they're locked, and like the door stopper was moved, and he can't even open them. So he's really freaking out and panicking and just pulling on the doors and screaming for help. And he has to stand in there until a security guard rushes over and opens the door. And the guy was just so out of breath and in shock that the manager called 911. And the only thing he could really say was, "I think I saw a ghost." And after that, he never returned to work again.
Oh my gosh. He was just totally freaked out.
Yeah, seriously. And one of the things that this happens to the story is people like to retell it, saying that it was Teddy Roosevelt sitting on the stool. But there was really never any proof of this. Like, the guy never said Theodore Roosevelt. So it may have been him trying to lure him to join, or it could have just been some other Rough Rider. But I'm thinking that saying Teddy Roosevelt at your place sounds way cooler.
Right.
But then a week later, after that, this bartender, he saw another soldier in a gray uniform go up the stairs, because the bar has a cute little balcony loft bar, and so he just saw a soldier go up there. And then that same year, there was a couple leaving the bar at closing, and then the wife witnessed this guy like enter the bar, and he was kind of like sauntering over to her all aggressively. And so her husband walks between them, and then the other dude, as he gets up to the husband, vanishes into thin air. And so that had 2 witnesses that saw this.
Wow.
And other entities of the Menger bar, there is a woman in blue. So for once, it's not like a woman in white. She is a woman wearing an old-fashioned blue dress. She has blonde hair, small wire-frame glasses, and she just kind of has like her hair pulled up. And she can be found sometimes just sitting quietly knitting or in a rocking chair. And on one occasion, a staff member stopped to ask her, because they didn't recognize it was a ghost. They're like, "Ma'am, are you comfortable? Can I get you something?" And then she like looks over kind of in an unfriendly way and is like, "No." And then she disappeared. So the Menger ghosts can really operate in such an intense level that they're solid.
Wow.
So I think that's kind of crazy. People kind of confuse them as actual staff members when they're not. She's been seen walking the hallways. She kind of goes around the second floor of the hotel, and a lot of the housekeepers have seen her when they're cleaning. And another ghost that is seen a lot, especially by the housekeepers and guests actually, is Sally White. She was an African-American woman who worked at the Menger as a chambermaid, and they say that she took pride in her work and she really enjoyed her job. Everyone there really loved her. She was a joy to be around. But she was married to an asshole named Henry Wheeler, and he was known for being a really jealous guy. One night after an argument, like it was so bad, she's like running away from him. She knows that he's about to get violent, and he shoots her in the back 3 times outside the Menger Hotel. So they took her inside and just to give her refuge and a place to stay and like a bed, and they were trying to nurse her back to health. It was over 2 agonizing days before she died because she just lost so much blood.
Wow. That's sad.
It is sad. This happened in 1876.
Wow.
So no way to really, I guess, nurse gunshots like that. Today in the ledger, in the lobby, there's a ledger that shows the price they paid for her coffin and her funeral. They said that they paid $25 for the coffin and $7 for the grave, and the Menger took care of that for her. So they have that page still for you to see in a glass case in the lobby. And Sally's ghost apparently continues to really perform her duties to this day. Like, she's still just on the clock working in her subconscious or something. So she's always in the Victorian wing of the hotel. She is usually wearing a long gray skirt and a bandana around her head, which is really common uniform for the era. And she'll have like a beaded necklace. She's usually seen at night and walking the hallways carrying a load of towels. So she's been reported delivering towels to guests' room, like knocking on their doors. They wake up and they're like, "Oh, towels? Okay, thanks." And so like people have called and been like, "Why did someone bring me towels? Can you tell them not to bother me?" And they'll be like, "Who brought you towels? Like, what do they look like?" And then when they describe it, they're like, "No one who works here wears that. That's not a uniform."
Right.
You know? So it's pretty crazy. Another apparition that is often reported is that of Captain Richard King. So he one time was an owner of the largest ranches in the world, which are the King Ranch. A frequent visitor to the Menger Hotel during his lifetime, and he actually had a personal suite within the hotel. When he learned of his impending death from his personal physicians, Captain King spent the last months of his life in the hotel, and he wrote his will and what to do with his wealth, and basically was just trying to like wrap up all the loose ends in his suite. And the King Ranch suite is still furnished to this day with the same furniture, and it's including the 4-poster bed that he actually died in. So thank God the mattress is different, but it's the same freaking furniture.
Right.
So I think that holds a lot of energy.
Sure.
And I think they have to be attached to a lot of the antique furniture in the building. But he loved the Menger so much that on April 15th, 1885, his funeral was actually held in the parlor. And today, the room in which he stays at, the King Ranch room, you can see him entering the old room because the door changed. They remodeled, so they had to move the door. But he'll walk through the old archway, basically through a wall, to the room, which is really crazy. I was too scared to stay there, but I've heard it's always booked and is really expensive anyway. But the room is so small, and to imagine him walking through the door, he would be at the foot of your bed in the middle of the night.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Really intense, yeah. And he kind of looks like a scarier, wrinkly Josh Brolin.
Okay.
So again, not an intelligent haunting. I think it's interesting to try to like classify what the ghost activity is like.
Right.
But everyone says the ghosts of the Menger Hotel are really malevolent. Like, he's not going to be an asshole to you. If anything, he's just going to walk into his room and, like, disappear.
Which is exactly kind of what a residual haunting would do. They don't even notice you. They don't see you. They're just there.
But then you got to think about people claiming that Sally's delivering towels. So if those reports are accurate, that's intelligent-ish.
It could be, unless she doesn't really acknowledge you. Maybe it depends on what she's seeing. Is she seeing you with your cell phone from today's time period, or is she just
Probably
seeing
not.
somebody from that time period?
Right. Okay. And I wonder if she physically has towels or not, or if like she never actually hands them to them.
Right. Who knows?
Yeah. So I was really hoping that I would see Sally, but she did not offer me towels, damn it. There's a lot of children's spirits that linger in the halls as well, and one in particular is the ghost of this little girl who was actually killed by a stagecoach outside, and she can be seen in the original portion of the hotel as well, and the original portion is really small. So another instance I was able to find is a guest was in the shower, and then when they got out, they saw an apparition dressed in a buckskin jacket and gray pants, and he was just having like a heated conversation with an unseen presence, and the entity was saying, "Are you gonna stay? Are you gonna go?" 3 times he said that in a row before vanishing, which I guess has to be, to me, that's horrifying.
It would be kind of scary. But, I mean, he's not talking to you. He's talking to somebody else.
Right,
so...
but if you're just, like, washing your hair and that's going on, dang.
You're like, what the heck?
Other entities have been known to kind of yell help in the kitchen area, moving various utensils that have just floated through the air all by themselves. They could even be seen transporting, like, utensils from one area to the other, just floating around. And another thing that's supposed to happen while you're staying at the Menger is that your phone might ring mysteriously. There was this one guy who was checking out of the hotel, and he saw that there were a lot of weird charges on his bill, and so they're like, "Oh, you had just had all these calls." And so he looks at the calls that were made, and he's like, "I didn't make any calls." But then he noticed that the phone number that had supposedly called his room was his mother's old telephone number, but she had actually died like years ago.
Oh my gosh. So I wonder, was his mom calling him or what?
That's what people think.
My gosh. That's crazy.
People think that she's trying to, like, because there's some sort of weird, maybe the
like
veil's
nexus
thing here.
Yeah, maybe some sort of nexus of whatever.
And I have to say, while I was here, there was a time the phone rang as I closed the door, and I didn't, like, go back in and answer it.
Oh.
I should have fucking answered it.
Yeah, you should have answered. Maybe you were too scared to answer it. I would have been like, I'm coming.
I was kind of like, I was just kind of being lazy because I was with other people and I didn't want to be like, let me go get that. Because I kind of assumed that it was the front desk because they were so hospitable here, I'll say that they would call for every little thing. Like, oh, did you get the rollaway bed? Or, oh, did you get this? How was your, like, thing? So I just kind of assumed, like, I don't expect a call. It's not for me. Don't worry about it. But
nice.
That's lazy investigating. Some other experiences that it could happen here is the smell of cigar smoke is often reported. And I was reading report after report of bar glasses moving by themselves. And one bartender said that one night he stacked these glasses in like a pyramid, and then he saw them fall over, crashing to the floor like one by one, but none of them even broke.
Wow.
And so I decided, because I read like maybe 4 or 5 accounts of specifically glasses moving, I'm bringing glasses into the Menger Hotel. And so I decided to set up, I found these little shot glasses, and I like saged them before I went there. And they even had like little skulls on them that said pick your poison. And then I stacked them in a little like trinity kind of, and then one on top of that little trinity like a pyramid. And I decided the one on top I would have facing so I could actually pour some rum into it as kind of like a spiritual offering. Just trying in my investigation to work with the ghosts, let them know I'm cool, I'm peaceful, and, I'm trying to be chill and work with them. Kind of like how I would with magic. So I had my back to the glasses. I'm talking to my friend Maria, who's in the restroom, and I hear the glasses crashing down. And so I wheel over, and like the rum's everywhere, and they're all moved. And I was like, Maria, the glasses, they're moving! The ghost moved them! And I got really excited and hyped. But at the same time, I'm like, that could have just been gravity. They could have just fell down. But I really think that was my legitimate one ghost experience of the whole event.
Wow. That's kind of interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, so I thought so. A lot of people there who I spoke to in the shops, they said that their stuff in the store kind of moves all by themselves. So I think that was like the main thing that you're going to see, aside from a full body apparition, just little bits of things. You just have to really be open to your environment. And so I tried a little experiment after that. I refilled the glass up with rum, stacked it again, and just to see if maybe it would fall because of other reasons other than ghostly, but it stayed perfectly still the entire night and until the morning.
Wow. So it probably was a spirit.
It probably was a spirit. Yeah. I should have filmed them. I don't know if that would have helped me figure it out more, but I'm really glad my experiment worked.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Another thing that really happened to me was that the rooms were freaking freezing, and it could be due to the fact that it was really old pipes, heating and cooling, like you couldn't even turn the heater on. But like it was like 61 degrees like all night. Like we were all freezing using like multiple blankets, and I woke up with like a sore throat.
Oh no.
So I don't know, it was freaking cold. That could just be a cold, or it could be ghosts. The whole time I'm trying to be really aware of my surroundings. In my day-to-day life, I could be locked up in my phone or just my job or whatever. Like, I'm not really looking for signs. But here, I had my receptors on. I was feeling the energy. And on the second floor or the third floor, I'm trying to remember, but I felt an immense amount of energy in the same spot that I felt energy last time I was there doing EVPs. And so I was trying to pick up on that and stand around and feel like, oh, this is definitely a presence. There's something here. But I didn't really get much more than that.
Wow.
And so my friends and I, we walked around the hallways around like 12 a.m., around 2 a.m. Every corner I was turning, I was like peeking it with such interest. Like I was going to see Sally White at the freaking end of the corner hallway. Like kind of like Stanley Kubrick. Like I just was so ready. And then I had this great idea. I was like, how great would it be if I just were to dress up like the lady in blue and walk around at night and freak people the hell out? Because we were not the only ones ghost hunting. There were other people out late at night, but around by 2 or 3, like we were the only people still up. But around like 12 and 11, 10, people were still out and about. So I really found it interesting. Like the people, the staff there, because it's a historical landmark, they welcome you to wander at all times.
That's so cool.
In the morning, I was walking around by myself and just kind of soaking in the place one time, like more before I left. And this employee was like, what you doing, looking for ghosts? And I was like, yeah, but I didn't see anything last night, but I tried. And he was like, well, I saw. And he kind of starts telling me his experience, and this was so awesome. He was like, I was a skeptic when I started working here. I didn't believe in ghosts, and then I've felt and seen things. So he was telling me how he has been touched and poked and pushed by unseen forces when he's just like cleaning and doing his job. He's heard voices of like kids or an old woman. Like he was in the kitchen with his coworkers and they heard a woman. Maybe he said help, but I can't remember what exactly he said, but they heard her voice audibly and there was nobody there. And then something moved.
Wow.
He's even reported seeing odd mists appear and vanish, which really piqued my interest because when we did our ghost episode, that was a type of ghost, like just mistly ghost. And I don't have any experience of this or really hear many people mentioning it.
Right.
And then his craziest experience was that he had in one of the rooms and a door was like cracked open, and kind of behind the door in the crack, he saw a frickin' soldier just standing there. And it was like in a bluish gray soldier uniform.
That's so cool. And they don't do reenactments there at all?
No.
Wow, that's cool then.
And he gave me a tip, which I have not been able to use because this was after I stayed the night there. It was the morning after. He told me between 2 and 3 a.m. He even showed me where this elevator was. He's like, you see that exit sign? Go to that elevator. It's for staff only. He's like, I don't care. And he said this in a hushed voice, and he waited for people to walk by us, his other employees. And then he told me this. He's like, you go in there and you just pretend that you're like lost. People do it all the time. Not a big deal. But if you go down to the docks, he called them the docks. And he's like, you walk around, you're going to see some shit. And I was like, dang, if only I knew about that last night. So, I don't know. What do you think about the types of hauntings here? Do you think, I guess it's just residual energy of war times in a stressful period?
I think it could be both. I mean, it could really, it depends. It almost sounded like certain things that happened, although most of what you said reminded me of residual haunting.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, I'm thinking, if you were to demolish those places, get rid of all that furniture, maybe shit wouldn't happen. But it's got to be tied to that furniture.
Right. And it could also be the land.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's
the
on the
space
same.
itself.
It's on the battlegrounds of the Alamo. So
yeah.
Lots of
Oh my
crazy
gosh.
energy.
Imagine how many people who passed away there. So many people died there.
I know. Sometimes when I'm standing in places like that, like I just think of all of time at once. Just who was in pain dying here, who battled here, who stabbed who right where I'm freaking standing.
Right.
It is
that would
tragic.
that would be really hard for me at first because of the empathic abilities. I think I'd be able to feel the energy. It's easy for me to say, like, in a place that I live at now, like in Salem here in Oregon, we only had like maybe 1 or 2 battles near us. I've never felt anything like a big giant battle, but I can imagine that being in a place like that where it was all real, man, I could only imagine what I would feel and how I would connect to it.
It's interesting because it's like parts of it are historic and untouched, and then cross the street and you're at Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum and tourism.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it's an interesting culmination of history and time. Mm-hmm. I definitely have a lot of haunted history in San Antonio and downtown in general, just because that whole area of the Wild West was so intense. Right. And we'll have to share more with you guys later.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think that wraps it up for today's discussion.
Yeah, that's about all we can do. We really hope that you enjoyed the episode.
Yes, and thank you guys for listening. Make sure to join us next Wednesday when we are going to be discussing Reiki. You can always find us on Instagram and Facebook, and don't forget to check out our blog at cousinscoven.home.blog, where you can find witchy words of wisdom, spells, and archive podcast episodes. And while you're there, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter, and our current podcast episodes can be found on Podomatic, Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere else podcasts can be found. So keep sending in your cauldron topic ideas, questions, or if you have any paranormal experiences into cousinscoven2@gmail.com.
May you find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and join each other. Blessings to all.